So yeah, this is what happens when someone suggests something on Twitter, and you're like, yeah, sure, I could do that. So yeah, this is actually this is because of Andrew and LA ProMongers and ZipRecruiter. So thank you, somewhat sarcastically, but yeah, I like it. I'm keeping it, so it's fine. All right. So should we start? Is there anyone outside that's waiting to come in?
We wanted to wait just another 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Oh, okay. Oh. I am a joke. It's not. It's the entire joke. Thank you. Yes. I should wear it to the. You never show up, so when would you know? Yeah. I didn't think I would have a lot of opportunities to be at such a prestigious place and wear something that's silly, so I like it.
All right, good enough. Let's do it.
All right, okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Sawyer. I'm the pumpkin, which is basically the person in charge of kind of leading the Perl 5 project. This is not my usual attire. Thank you. I wanted to talk about 5.26. But first, the title also, as you can see, I'm actually very fast on making decisions on either titles or attires. So the title actually comes from a TV show that I like, Futurama. How many people here like Futurama? Okay, good. Everyone knows the title, right? There's like a species of cats in one of the episodes that because they're so cute and lovely, they can control everyone, which is basically nowadays anyway. And they call Earth blue shiny ball. And I shouldn't come up with names with Stephen Little daring me from the sideline. So, okay. So 5.26. P5P, short for Perl 5 porters, the group in charge of maintaining Perl 5 and developing it, we have a tradition of noting any colleague, any friend, any community member that have passed on during the cycle, the release cycle of a version. And before we begin, I would like to make note of that, I feel, because this is the 5.26 talk. And 5.26 did come out noting 2 community members that have passed on. I think it would be just appropriate to also mention them in this talk, and that is John and Kip, who are not with us. So thank you for that. If you know John, if you knew John or Kip, then you definitely know their contributions for the community and for anyone who knew them. Okay, so 5.26. The first question that I had when I started working on this talk is that there are a lot of people who worked on 5.26, but not everyone knows them, and I think that it would be really nice to start with that. Who really made 5.26? And for what it's worth, I did very little. So there's this script called acknowledgements.pl. You can run it from the porting directory in the Perl 5 source code. And the porting directory is basically where we put a lot of our utilities. And the acknowledged one will take 2 tags and will tell you all the people that were involved with this, also how many files were changed and stuff like that. We actually use this information when we make a release and you have the information of what has changed. We use a lot of this data from here. These are the people that were involved in releasing 5.26. All these people, these are not the only people because a lot of people have created tickets, reported issues, documented things, commented on them, and so on. But these are people who had acknowledged commits that the script was able to identify. The following people, I would like them to please raise your hand. Abigail, Jim, Rick, Steven, Chad, Dave, Bulk, Nicolas, Doug, David. These are all people here now from this list that are with us. Not everyone is, but these people are. And I think, first of all, thank you, okay? If you see them around, feel free to say thank you, high five, a hug, whatever everyone's comfortable with, and buy them a beverage of their choice or just not. Okay, so obviously what's going on in this talk is that someone comes up on stage and says, okay, let me tell you about everything that is in 5.26. And I was starting to think about this. And the reason I thought about this is that This is the common question that I get asked now, because 5.26 is the first version stewarded by me. And these are really large shoes to fill, even though I'm a larger shoe size than Rick. And I was thinking, what is it that it will be known for? When people ask me, what is there? I keep thinking, well, I don't know. I should know this. So I started looking at previous versions to understand what's in those releases. What are they known for? 5.20 introduced subroutine signatures. It was a big step. They've changed since, but it was a major step. The new slice syntax, I personally like it very much. Postfix deref, that the more you use it, the more you like it, so the more you're going to see it. Unicode 6.3 came out. To prevent me from giving any additional talks on CGI-PM, it was removed from core. 5.22 added the bitwise operator that very, very few people use. The double diamond that I think even fewer use. Quick side note, if every time you see a diamond you change to the double diamond, everything will be better. So just go ahead and do that. We had a few specific Unicode known spaces that we added, word boundaries specifically. The regex they now get the /n, and those actually change all of those grouping in parentheses to not capture. So you don't have to have $1, $2. It just disables that, which is pretty cool. We have straight regular expressions. We have Unicode 7. Now you could alias by reference. If you don't know what that is, totally fine. Don't worry about it. Subroutines can now add the attribute const. So these are really big things. That was 5.22. One of my favorite ones is the multi-deref op that basically takes access to a hash or an array, and then inside it another one, and then inside it another one, and then inside another one. And instead of multiple operations, it creates one single operation in the op tree, which makes it much, 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 much faster. And I love that. And that was the work of Dave Mitchell. 5.24 came out, and it had the postfix deref finally in for good, so that was great. The auto deref was removed. The lexical, topical variable was removed. Unicode 8 came out, and Unicode 8 to me was a big thing because they added the diversity system. I will give a tip of the hat to that later. Some more word boundaries. The context stack rework. That was another piece of work by Dave Mitchell that basically restructured and reworked the entire way the context stack works, which to most of us it means nothing other than, hey, subroutines are now 30% faster. Which is not bad at all. So Dave Mitchell did that, and he deserves a lot of thanks. Unicode 8 specifically, one of the things I liked about it is that it added a lot of these ideas. If you take a look at this is an example of something you could do with Unicode, that you could just take a heart and you can add a color variation to it. Now it becomes a red heart. You can take characters and you can use a zero width joiner in order to create one single character, not a picture, an actual character, which is a combination of multiple other characters, which is really cool. And one of them is even in a red color, which is amazing. It's so cool. And you can create this image, which I don't have this character supported on Firefox. Because Perl can do this, but Firefox is not up to date enough. So I always like to say that my dead language is more capable than my super duper modern browser. And Chrome didn't have that, and my terminal didn't have that. So it's like Perl is too up to date. This is a problem. And it also added a diversity system that added skin tones based on the Fitzpatrick scale, that you can finally provide a representation of people the way they really are. Because none of us are yellow. There is no single person in the world that is actually yellow. But now we can actually present people with a different scale of real colors used by the Fitzpatrick scale, which has its faults, but it is probably one of the more accurate ones that we have. I hope that the width will actually match for the rest of my slides. We'll see. So yes, okay. All of this happened before 5.26. So I'm looking at this, like, this is pretty cool. What happened in 5.26? Well, not really sure. So let me try and cover that. First, the big stuff, okay? We made a change with ink, and we need to talk about it. It was a big change, and it's important to understand. Basically, we removed dot. Dot is the current directory, and if previously my computer had this, as the directories of Inc. For those who are less familiar with it, Inc. is basically this array. And when Perl wants to load a module, it will go through this array filled with directories and look for that module in one of those directories. At the very end, it used to look for the current directory. So if you wanted to load foobar, it would go through all of these directories and try to find foobar in it. And if it couldn't find it, it would say, well, do we have it in the current directory, yes or no? And if we did, you're on. It's good. Except we removed it, which doesn't work anymore. For most cases, this is actually fine, but there were a lot of things that used it that we didn't know about, that assumed that it would be there in the current directory and that it would have been fine. But we had to remove it due to security constraints. So most security problems are not really one single thing. Most security problems, just like a lot of issues, are a combination of multiple small things that just happen to come up together. If you are running code and jumping to a directory, and that directory could be written by someone else, by itself, it's fine. But what if you want to load a module? And what if your system, your language, automatically tries to load from anywhere, including wherever you are now, which is now also writable by someone else? That's a problem, because you might load something they put in that just matches the right path. Now you could say, no, that's okay, because if you notice, we have all of these directories first. So we probably loaded it from there, if it existed. Well, what if it didn't exist? Oh, well, clearly it would fail. Well, what if it's optional, and you don't detect when it fails? Then you don't know. Then it could sometimes exist, and sometimes not exist, and to you it's the same. So it becomes like this perfect storm of all of these different things that come together, and suddenly, uh-oh. And we're not the first who removed dot from the include directory path. So there is some form of prior art to this. So what's going on now? Well, Perl still works, so that's good. And CPAN is not on fire, which is always good. But there might be code that you use, that you have written, that your company uses, that still depends on dot being in Inc. There might be a test that fails. Maybe you're doing a build on your own manually, and you realize, wait a minute, where's dot? So there are a few things that you could do in order to accommodate this, and I would like to know that some of it is very temporary. So you're skating on thin ice. You can have it till you fix it, but please do fix it. Because at some point, we will not allow that many workarounds to this, because we want to kind of lock this down. We've always tried to allow as many things as possible, but when security comes in, it basically takes over a lot of the conditions that we have because we don't intend to be insecure. If you always want to be insecure, you could do that yourself just fine. But the language should provide you with a very good minimal set of security situations. Okay, so first of all, if you are aware of dot, because you changed to that directory yourself, and you can control that, you can just put dot back in Inc using push. This is in a begin block, which means that it will happen before any other use statement during compilation time. So this is totally fine. Just jump into that directory when you compile, add dot to Inc, you're good. Another thing you could do is, for a particular call, you can create a bare block, and in that bare block, you could localize Inc, which means that as soon as you exit the block, Inc is back to normal. And then once you localize Inc and say, hey, this is Inc, but with a dot at the end, you could then call whatever needs dot in Inc. And as soon as you exit that bare block, Inc is back to normal, everything is fine, and read config, in this case, is an example of a function, had dot in Inc when you needed it. That's also a good thing, but then please fix read config when you get the time. You could also use this environment variable, and this environment variable basically disables the safety. It puts dot back in Inc. This is what is used by the toolchain in order to do the testing for modules that actually do need dot in Inc. It sets this up. And you can also configure Perl yourself if you're a vendor or if you want to compile it yourself. You can also do that and undefine, that's what the U stands for, undef the protection for that. But don't do this. And at some point, we will remove this as well. Okay. And oh, I forgot, there's one more thing that always worked, and that's use lib dot, but take into account that actually puts it at the beginning, which might matter, might not. If you're running do, how many people here use do? It's a thing, right? And do actually uses Inc as well. And a lot of us were not aware of it. We thought do was basically just a path. Well, path, but Inc. So do uses dot as well, and because we removed it, it affected do also. If you want to have do and you want from current directory, you can just add dot slash. Works just fine. There's one more thing that we've added, and that is in the cases where we can detect something that would have worked and wouldn't now. If you actually do have this situation where you call do in some file and you assume it's the current directory, everything will work, and now it doesn't, and we knew that it would have worked, then what happens is that we will still give you a warning by saying, hey, this failed. It would have actually worked. You probably want to change it to this instead, which is very nice. Where's Matt? Is Matt here? Thought I saw him. Okay. He deserves a thanks for basically saying, hey, could we add this? That would be so useful. It's like, all right. Okay, so let's move on. We talked about ink, and that's half the talk. Now, indented here docs. How many people know what this is? Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. Should I skip my entire example? Never mind. Okay, so I have this pattern. This is the pattern that I always have. I really enjoy it. I write a lot of command line applications, and one of the things, the first thing you should do in a command line application is have a help, even if it doesn't do anything other than saying you can print help. And with the way that I do help is that I'll have the same command printing the help, but then I might send a parameter saying, hey, you also made this mistake. So print the mistake and then print the help. And it looks like this. You get a message, and this is a pattern that I have. David Golding gave a talk where he mentioned that sometimes you could just reduce scope for unnecessary situations. This is a pattern that I have, like the open or die. I like this pattern, and basically says, if there is a message, print it. Otherwise, we're good. And then we start this thing. And I don't know who here has used here docs, but if you have, you've done this, where you wrote it, and you put this and realized that won't work because now we have spaces. Now we have to move it back to the side because it starts from the beginning of the line. And then I'm going to put the terminator, but no, wait, that won't work either. So we have to put that over there as well. And I have actually once seen code where the terminator, which you can see right in, you can't, I don't know if you can, right next to the print. There's the terminator. In the quote, someone put in spaces so they could indent it. Has anyone done that? All right. To be fair, I've done that too. Okay, so now we have indented here docs. Indented here docs take this here doc character and say, hey, let's put a tilde here. And by adding just this tilde to create this, what Carl Williamson calls a here doc with a twist. This one, what it does is basically say, hey, you know what, you can indent this. And when you indent this, what happens is that you can put the terminator indented as well. And now using that terminator, it looks at all of those spaces and says, I'm just going to cut that amount of space. And if there's extra space, like the -h symbol there, I will keep it. I will just cut down the same amount of space from that line too. So the .h will be indented, the -h, I'm sorry. The -h will be indented, but options and the $0 for the program name won't be indented. Someone asked me last time, what happens if there are fewer lines? It will croak, basically saying you can't do that. This feature, by the way, it's a very interesting thing. Matthew Horsfall, who's not with us today this time, he came on the mailing list and he said, I've been told this can't be done. I've written it. Can someone please check? And people checked and were like, yeah, done. So there are a lot of things that we don't try because we're kind of worried and we're not sure if it's possible, but they are actually fairly possible. Did you have a question, Chad?
Yes, I did. If you wanted the help to be unindented one more so it lined up with the print statement, would that cause all the other things to be indented?
I believe so. Okay. So, okay, what else did we do? We did Unicode 9. Unicode 9 is supported. It actually came out a little bit after 5.24, but we always put it in when we are ready for it. So that's 5.26 is already with Unicode 9. Unicode 9, everyone's excited because it adds whiskey, right? I don't drink. I'm not excited about whiskey. It adds no interest or joy in my life. However, what is almost a religious experience for me is avocado. I am well dressed today, but I do have with me my avocado shirt. Now, what I like is that for what I believe is the first time ever, the Unicode Consortium has added another character, another emoji, just to be able to respond to people who react to you on how you present a different character from the same standard. What I mean is, If I'm excited about avocado and someone goes, ah, avocado, then finally they also added, with this Unicode, a way for me to respond to that, which is the facepalm. Thank you. Another avocado aficionado. So yeah. And if you're on social networks, this probably describes how some of your day is like sometimes. Now, other than those, obviously Unicode 9 actually adds real things as well, not just characters, not just these nice symbols, but these are languages. These are languages that people who speak them are now able to natively express themselves, which is very, very important. The last one is an example of a language. Sure, it's historic, but that means that you could research it better, which is very important because we research languages as well. So these actually add very important value. And when we like sending all of these texts, this is another thing that Unicode does, which in some cases is far more important. And we kind of like, I don't speak this, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but someone does. So yeah. Except the last one, but someone studies it. So, funny story. I worked at a company a long, long time ago, and the developers used, the R&D department used PHP, and which is not relevant to the story. And I remember they would ask us, the sysadmins, because that's what I used to do there, for help once in a while on things that they didn't understand in their own code or in the process or in the servers and whatever. And I remember one time they wanted some help debugging something that appeared on the production website. So I open up the website, and what I see is a character of greater than. And underneath that, there was another greater than. And underneath that, there was another greater than. And the entire website was scrunched down. So I click View Source, and lo and behold, there were a lot of greater than, and then a bunch of text, and then a lot of equals, and then a bunch of text, and a lot of less than. Effectively, what happens is someone developed a feature on a different branch, and a lot of time had passed, and then they decided to just merge it. It conflicted everywhere. So they started reviewing it. It was over 100 files, and at some point they said, and they just merged it. And then deployed it. Okay, so imagine this code. Very relevant to the current state of the US. So this is an example of a conflict between two different versions. And if you run it now in Perl, does anyone know what will happen? Brando? Here doc. Very good. How many here docs does it identify? Okay, this is the output. It says use a bear twice, and then it says I just can't find a string terminator for this. But until then, totally fine. But now if you run it on 5.26, this, wait.
Because that's code in 5.28.
Yes, wait, Abigail, you can't. We talked about this. This is on 5.24. If you run it on 5.26, it says this, which is, hey, I discovered 3 version control conflict markers. You don't see them, I'm sorry, oh, you do see them a little bit. So what you see is the less than, the equal, the greater than. And on newer versions, if we actually try 5.27, which is currently bleed, then it will also tell you that that thing will be like an empty bare here doc terminator will be removed. Most of us don't know what it is, but then you saw Abigail's talk, so now you know, and it's great. You haven't used it, and now it's also removed. Okay, capture data variables. This came in actually just a little bit before we were ready for the freeze entirely, and Eve Orton came in and said, this is kind of cool, put it in, which was really awesome, because let me show you what it does. This is another pattern that I have. I will use some regular expression and do some captures. Those are the parentheses that you see. And I will capture 3 things. They won't always be A, B, and C, but you know. And then I will have to copy them over to other variables. Now you can, of course, name them, but this is a more common pattern that I have. And this is very frustrating until you realize, wait a minute, I can do this all together, because Perl allows to do a lot of things together. This is much simpler. And then you have to check that you received all 3, right? So you go, if I don't have the first one, or I don't have the second one, or a different way that I do this is this one, if I have the first one, and the second one, and the third one, or I just don't. It's very frustrating. But what happens if there's one of them is optional? So the C, the last one, now there's a question mark that says, oh, maybe not. Well, now we have to have a default. We need to check. So frustrating. And it happens to me all the time. So now with the new capture variables, you can just use that instead as an array, which will contain all of the captured variables. You don't need to know if there was a $4. Just go to this array. It's fantastic. You can also use it just like any other array. It's great. If using a hash plus or hash minus, you now have compatible variables for that, which is the hash hat capture and hash hat capture all. And if you don't use them, that's also fine. I don't think I've ever used them. The double X. Double X comes from our idea of having much more readability in regular expression. It's really funny for a language that everyone accuses of being write-only and not read. It actually has a lot of facilities for readability that other languages had to take as well because they were so good. One of those ideas is the X, that some languages don't even support it yet. You have to just have a string. But we have X, and now we have double X. So let's start with X first. You have this regular expression, and you say, oh, this is really condensed. This is also really condensed. I shall put an X, and I will have spacing. The problem is that this is a character class right there, which basically means one of these. And when it's one of these and you put a space, it will say one of these, including, for example, a space. So you can't put a space because it thinks it's a literal space. So you can only expand before and after. But now we have double X, and double X says, no, 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 no. I want to expand even further. And the really nice thing is you can see that this might have been confused to say D, E, G, I, 3, or 7. It might seem like that, but it is actually D to E, G to I, 3 to 7. And now it's much clearer. And this actually matters. And the next one also seems much clearer as well. So this is the double X. Very nice. I like that very much. Script extensions is another thing that we've added. Script extensions make quite a few things more accurate when it comes to a particular script in Unicode. Most of us don't know what it is. If you do know what it is and you say, oh, but what if I had something very particular that was more accurate than their script, that is also supported. For most of us, no idea what this means. But it's documented, so we can read about it if we're interested. So Perl Unicode has a part called scripts, and if you're interested in what does it really mean, script extensions, you can read about it there. You might have seen an error called unescaped left brace in Regex. And at first I was like, I can just mention it. But now I've realized we see this, but we don't know what it means. And I think it would be important to explain. See, all these lines have these left brace characters in there. And in all of these lines, we mean a literal one, which basically means, no, seriously, that specific character. Even the \D, that means digit, and then we know that it means a quantity, because there's nothing in there, we actually mean, no, just a digit and then 2 braces, which is very confusing. And we actually want to use the curly for more stuff, because curly doesn't serve enough purposes in Perl. So, also dollars. So now it will give you a warning and it will say, hey, no, you're gonna have to really, if you want this character, please escape it, put a slash there, a backslash there, so we know that you want this character versus something that we use this character to mean. So take also into account that in 5.30, this will also be fatal. So the only way to do this is the super complicated put a backslash before that. Also the \Q and the \E for quoting and end quoting will work as well. So that's all you got to do. And of course on the right there, that's a right brace, but when you write braces, literally, you often do both parts. There are 2 specific... pardon me? So at this point, I'm not sure if all cases will be caught and warned about, but I think it would be good practice moving forward to just escape when you see curly braces, when you want them as literals. And that would be a way for you to preempt any possible change in the future. Does that help? Excellent. So there are two specific cases that are allowed exceptions. We allow them now, we will allow them in the future. And these are when you have a left brace at the beginning. And that happens in two cases. First, at the beginning, obviously, right over here. And also when you have a group and you want to do an or condition, and then one of those clauses has a beginning. That's also what's happening in the second line. And that's also allowed, but please, I recommend not doing it. Yes? Within a character class, actually I'm not sure. I think it is a literal. It is a literal. Yes, sorry. So, yeah, if you're not sure and you're like, I don't remember what's allowed and what's not, just escape it. You're good. Just escape it. It's fine. Okay, so there are references to variables. Now, we had ref aliasing in previous versions, but we've added the declared refs. Previously, you could do this in order to create an alias. Now you could actually use the reference directly. And the entire change here is the ability, not the switch, but the ability to move the backslash before foo. That's it. That's the entire thing. And some people, Rick, will love this. Thank you, Rick. Okay. One more thing. So yeah, there's a pattern that we sometimes do, and when I say we sometimes do, I mean I do quite frequently, which is to use a hash, I want to get the keys from it, or I want to get something else from it, and I actually just use the hash instead by accident. How many times have you written my foo equals hash directly? So this puts the hash in a scalar context. Now, this is a short quiz. I have prepared ahead of time a hash. And the hash has how many elements? Trick question. We do not really explain what elements are. Nice try. How many keys? 150. You did better than I, but I'm dyslexic, I'm allowed. Value is 150, right? Good. What will foo be if I print it? Randall is not allowed to answer. Now, what will, is Damien here? Is Larry also, I'm sorry. Love you to death. You are not allowed to participate. Someone hold him down. Okay. Let's do this. Let's do this. How many people say it will be 300, which is both the keys and the values? Raise your hand. Okay, cool. How many people say it will be just the number of keys? That's 150, right? Just the number of keys. Okay. Any other suggestions? Interesting ideas? Then I'm the letter K. Rick, I would love to accept your answer, but that is not a number. 9. Very good. I tried this. I got 118 over 256. So very few people, Rick, know what this means. And it actually has information about the bucketing done inside. And as soon as you enter 518 with hash randomization, this becomes an entirely different thing, which means that if I can run it again and again, it might print out different stuff per process it runs. So this becomes very complicated. It is it is always a mistake to do this because very few people understand what this means. And if you do understand what this means, it doesn't help you at all. There is not a single thing you could do with this information. Nothing. So we fixed that, and it will now just return, sorry? Confusing junior developers. No, we are actually working on a set of new things to confuse early adopters. So it will now print the number of keys, which is also like way faster, and you could use it. Thank you. See, Larry trolls like a boss. Okay. All right, so we fixed a few things while we're at it. I'd like to note a few. We said farewell to Usenet in all of the documentation. The temp name in POSIX, removed, gone. Encoding, very few people used it, and if you want to use it, I suggest you don't. But if you still want to use it, you can get it in filter encoding, or encoding PM has it, and then you could also just not do it. You used to be able to use double colon in the beginning of a require. You can't anymore. This was actually a syntax change that we accidentally made, and we broke stuff. See, when you do, in quotes, foo : bar, up until 518, what it meant is I have a variable foo : and I would like to concatenate it to $bar. You'll say, yeah. Now, in 518, this changed to say I have a variable $foo, I would like to concatenate it to : and then I would like to concatenate it to bar. So we fixed that. It was broken from 5.18 till now, so apparently not that many people noticed. And one of the more important ones, if you have a type glob with 6 consecutive colons, it now works again. I don't know if it worked before, but it now works at least. So very, very crucial. Okay, some optimizations we've done. Subroutine signatures were a really nice thing. It was a good idea. We played with that. But now they're as fast as not using them. So they're comparable in speed, so you can just use them directly. Don't worry, there is no degradation. And we do have some plans for more. Thank you. I didn't do the work, but thank you. Okay, this is also Dave Mitchell. A lot of our optimizations are done by Dave Mitchell. Now, if you're using 64-bit, it is the default in most of our environments. The hashing function is now faster, which is important. Readline is faster. If you do assignments, and on the left side, the LHS stands for left-hand side, basically means on the left side. There is an array or a hash at the end. It will be faster, considerably faster. Also, if you have any string that you convert to a number and it's a single digit, that will also be considerably faster. Bare word constant strings are now constant folded as well. So, trying to summarize 5.26. And this is mostly a note to self. So when someone asks me, I can use this. First, 5.26 gave us and is giving us a safer ink. It gives us Unicode 9, indented here docs, captured data variables, version control marker recognition, the double X, Unicode script extensions by default, which means more accurate scripts in Unicode. Fast subroutine signatures, no degradation in speed compared to not using them. And several other optimizations and a bunch of fixes. So that's pretty good, right? Now, a few notes moving forward. We've had a hackathon last year, the first time. Todd Guinaldo and I organized a core hackathon. It was modeled after the toolchain hackathon, which is kind of different from other hackathons. It's not basically a free-for-all. It's more like we are trying to handle specific tasks, so we gear specifically towards them, and we come in, we work on them, and we write a report at the end. And it has its merits, which is why it has always been successful. And we tried to do that with a core. We accomplished a bunch of stuff. There's a blog post that I really recommend reading about this. And we've got some really good sponsorship. It was under the TPF, so it was an official Perl Foundation conference, which was excellent. I'd like to thank the Perl Foundation for helping us with this. It was fantastic. And we intend to have another one in October. So you should wait for another report of what we could do. And if you have ideas of stuff you think we should be working really hard during the hackathon, because we get all of these crazy people into one room and we can talk and work together and stuff. So it's fantastic. So if you have any idea for all of us to work on, feel free to share. Now, 5.27 is the current development release. We're working on that. We released 5.27.0. And there's another one coming up soon, which I'll share in a bit. But I want to tell you what's already in it. Because like, what's in it? It's been at least a month and a half. But we did do things already in a month and a half. So first, we now can do delete on key value slices. I use slices all the time. This is really nice. If you're using formats, how many people here use formats? Tux is not here, and he's probably one of the few people I know that actually use formats. But if you do, you cannot use a comma-less variable list anymore. It was deprecated since version 5. It's gone. We're done. We have a specific apology directly to Tux. Okay. Locked and unique, that was also mentioned by Abigail earlier. It is gone. By the way, since 5.12, this did nothing. So you wrote it, and you were like, oh, awesome, did nothing. Ignored. No op. If you're using \n and there's empty braces in there, it is now illegal because it doesn't do anything. This one, Abigail mentioned as well, this was an example of something that is a very controversial issue for us. Not particularly this one. It just represents an issue. This, by the way, I remember seeing this the first time, I don't remember when. I didn't even know what that was. But basically it means that you have a here doc. Abigail gave an example of this, but if you don't remember, it's you have a here doc, and then you're supposed to put a terminator. So you put like end, or, you know, not underscores and underscores, but something else. And you can also put in like just empty. You could do that. You could put like quotes in quotes or two single quotes, and that will work. It basically means if I see one empty line, that's the end of that. That is also fine. The only thing that is not fine is not doing anything. Just put in a semicolon, like that's it. And that actually worked. And that was what's called this thing. That's the bear one. It's a bear here doc terminator. I have never once seen it. And we had an issue where we wanted to add the indented here docs. And this is one example of the complications of software at a large scale, like things like Perl, which is used everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And what happens is that we wanted to put a different thing. Instead of a tilde, we wanted to put a dash, and it confused this mechanism somehow. So we're like, okay, now it's in the way. So this is the right time to deprecate something and remove it. Because the policy is, if it doesn't break anything, don't break it, which is a sensible policy. You know, if it's not in your way, don't touch it. If it's in your way, you can't do something, then you can do it. And we said, okay, then I guess it's time to remove it. But now we need 2 releases to warn you about it so you can remove it from your code, which is also a very good policy to have. If I'm going to remove something, you have at least 2 stable versions to fix your code. But now we're in the situation where we want to have a change that takes 2 releases, and at the 3rd one, we actually want to introduce something I want to do now. This was a mess. So we changed it to tilde. And then we said, okay, then can we remove it now? And now it was like, well, it's not in the way anymore, right? So this becomes a thorn that happens in development sometimes, and we're removing it. This, by the way, important to note, Abigail mentioned this, but I do want to mention it again. Not 5 point something. 5.000 deprecated it in 1996 by the way, Larry, who made a commit that basically said, okay, deprecated, warn, that's it. Which was good, except we didn't follow up, and then we got into an argument whether we should follow up. And we decided we do follow up. Thanks, by the way, to Abigail's work during the core hackathon, we decided that every single deprecation now has a version, and you know when it's removed, which is very crucial. Thank you, by the way, Abigail, because he pushed that idea and made sure that we cover every single deprecation. All right, if you use hashes and your key is over 2 gigs,
No!
So first, Dave, you would be surprised to know it was never actually supported. But now you also know that it wasn't supported, which is important. Okay, if you have code points that go above this value, it won't work. But now we also tell you about this. And this, by the way, broke 2 modules. They did come from the same one, so one came from the other, but it already broke something, so we already see that someone accidentally did that, so, or on purpose, I don't know, but this is another thing that we're changing. This is not in yet, and I'm kind of giving you a kind of like a heads up. We want to make signatures fast. We don't want to make them as fast. We've done that. What we want to do is make them faster. I want to give you one more reason to use signatures other than, dude, like, it's so much better. Now you could say, it's also faster. I have to use it. So we have some plans to do this. Hopefully 5.28, I can't promise. This will likely also be David Mitchell. And we've also added Travis CI. So now we have Travis CI for Perl. And this took a while because it was kind of awkward. And a lot of people helped with that, so thank you very much. 5.27, I mentioned that. We had 5.27.0. And tomorrow, there is another version. 5.27.1 is released by Eric Herman. He already prepared everything. Tomorrow, he just presses the button. So it's pretty cool. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, hey, this is kind of nice. I would love to say thank you. Not to me. You want to say thank you to the people who did the work. I didn't do anything. But if you want to do this and they're not at the conference, there's this really cool thing you can do. It comes with Perl. You can just run a command called Perl things. And then it opens up an editor. You can argue over which editor is best later because it will open your configured one. And who uses this here? I do. Why? Okay. So you run Perl things, you get an editor, you put in a message of like, hey, thank you. I really appreciate all the work that you did, and I enjoy this very much. And it will send an email that will reach the mailing list for Perl 5 porters. It is public, and we all monitor it and read it all the time. And it is very heartwarming to get someone who uses it to say, hey, I use this, and I really appreciate the work you did on this. It's great. So if you want to do this, you could do that. Now I have 7 minutes left, and it's exactly the right time to get to my talk. My talk is titled You and Perl. How many people here, and if you don't feel comfortable, that's also fine, but I would love a show of hands. How many people here know C to some degree? That's fairly a lot. That's not bad. What about C++? Okay, wow. Fantastic. What about Perl? Wow. I assume some people are raising 2 hands. Larry, right? 2 Perls? Still working on it. When you say I write Perl, you mean the language, not even... Okay. So I don't have that many jokes, but... so yeah. And has anyone here written tests? Fixed tests? Something like that? Okay, great. How many people here, with the last show of hands, I promise, have either written or read documentation? Okay, very good, very good. So we have all of this in core, right? We have some C code. If you know C++, it helps, though we're not C++. If you know Perl, it helps. If you have written tests, if you have fixed tests, if you've written documentation, if you've read it and you know what you don't like reading. All these things we have, and we have a need for help with those. So if you're interested in saying, hey, actually, I want to contribute to the language itself as well, then I really suggest coming over and helping us out, because there are a lot of stuff to do. Some of the stuff that we need is even just tracking everything that needs to be done. So far, it's done by Jim, by the way, Jim Keenan, and he does amazing, amazing work with this. But it's not easy, and we need help with basically everything. If you're interested, there's a mailing list for it, and the mailing list is Perl 5 Porters. You can join. There's a strict standard of behavior, standard of conduct that we adhere to, which basically is don't be a jerk. And we stand by it. We're very serious in order to make sure that we have an environment that we all feel comfortable talking in and sharing and working together without anyone trying to take the stage. I shouldn't be saying this because I'm on stage, but you know what I mean. And taking over or not leaving you room to be there. So it's very important, and we stand by that. And we would love for you to join us and make it even more of that kind of place with even more work on it. If you don't want to read it, because it's actually, there's quite a little bit of traffic in there, you can also just read the summaries. I try to summarize it every week. Usually comes out on Monday. This time will probably come out tomorrow if I finish, because I want to include the new release. And you can read the summaries themselves. They are published on the list. There are several people who register the list and do not read it, just because it's a lot, but if there's something there that they want to comment on, they will. And instead, they read the summary emails on this list. But you can also read the summaries on the blog that I maintain, or on the Twitter account, or on a specific mailing list just for summaries, which is Perl 5 Summer. Some of the behavior that we encourage and would like to maintain, I suggest as a general thing. Diversity and inclusivity is crucial. These are different things, but they're both very important. Be welcoming, be friendly, and be cooperative. Because one single person cannot do this, or at least can't do this properly. But a lot of people can do amazing work. And some people don't actually understand why it is valuable to have more than just you, or more than just you and a few friends, and this matters. So I kind of want to iterate a little bit about this from a technical perspective. Having more people means that you have more eyes on a problem, you have more hands helping with it. It means you have different skills, different abilities, because we're all different. And it is good to have all of these skills and abilities. The code is better because it adheres to more things, more ideas. The documentation is better because it speaks to more people. And the testing is better because it covers more situations, more platforms. And the community gets bigger, which is what we want. What I really want, my goal from this talk, is that next year when I present what we did and I show you all the people involved, it includes all of you. And I hope to see that. So some quotes to end it. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Another one that I like, I could not find who said it, but I assume someone said it to someone else somewhere. To make each other proud. I think we should make each other proud. I'd like to quote an American president, because we're in the right place, not this American president, but a different one, who said, be excellent to each other. He said it by an actor at a film, and it wasn't him, but it still counts. Because the story, the spirit behind it is what matters. And really, that's about it. Thank you very much. and have a great tipsy.